Welcome to the Communicating Capital podcast, where finance and communication get a fresh perspective. Hosted by a dynamic team of women in the industry, we're here to redefine the conversation with candid, no-nonsense interviews with top executives, communication experts, and industry leaders. With a focus on clarity and real-world impact, we make the complex world of finance relatable and digestible. So whether you're a seasoned professional or you're just interested in our world, we're here to help you navigate the space in new and exciting ways. Today, joining us from Rio, of all places, is Cory Warfield. Cory is an entrepreneur and tech founder with an incredible background in everything from AI, machine learning, Web3, and blockchain. Cory, you've had such an incredible journey from start to finish, and I can't wait to dive into it. So even more so, I'm excited to be speaking with you today.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me. Thank you for bringing the amazing energy, and let's have some fun.
I'm so excited because, Cory, you really do have such a unique story. You started your career in the restaurant industry over, I would say decades ago, and you've transformed into more of tech, entrepreneurship. Would you be able to share with us how that transformation really happened and what inspired you to take the leap and start your own company?
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, classic entrepreneurship. It was out of frustration and a problem that I perceived. But I'll zoom way back into the 90s. I dropped out of college after 1 year to become a computer software tester for Rand McNally. And they were known for making maps at the time, but I helped them with their first encyclopedia software and their first GPS software. I left there to become a metrologist at Searle Pharmaceutical Research, which metrology is the science of weights and measures. So I had my own office and a lab coat, and I kept calibrations within certain deviants for the FDA. And, this is as a teenager, and I was making something like $35 an hour, which at the time was a lot of money.
That's a lot.
And for whatever reason, I've always been an amazing rapper and freestyle rapper, and I left kind of all of that to pursue a career as a gangster rapper. And so when you're a gangster rapper, you have to carry guns and sell drugs. And so I went on a kind of self-booked tour, ended up just, it was as bad as it sounds, right? Like I was not supposed to be a gangster rapper. And so I ended up kind of on the West Coast with nothing going for me in life. And I started washing dishes at a restaurant. So that turned into becoming a busboy, then a waiter, then a bartender. And I did that for almost 20 years around the country. So I worked at some of the top steakhouses in the country. I got certified as a sommelier. At the time, there were only 3 levels, and I achieved the second of those levels. And I kind of felt like I would be in restaurants for absolutely ever. And in Chicago, where I'm from, I had regulars like Michael Jordan and Vince Vaughn and like all these people I grew up loving. And I got to know all of them, and they were all so nice to me. And then I just had this kind of revelation. I was getting closer to 40 years old, and I realized that although I got to, hug Magic Johnson and serve Bill Clinton and all these people, not only were we not equals, but I realized kind of in a delusion of grandeur that I was just a servant in the castle. And even though I was making 6 figures and I was able to support my family and those around me, I realized that I didn't feel like I was living up to my potential. And so simultaneously, I was always frustrated that the on-call shifts meant I never knew when I was going to work. I didn't know how much money I was going to make when I was in management. It was hard for me to control the P&Ls and hit my numbers. And so I had this moment where I wanted New Year's Eve off. I'd asked for it off for months. They said I'd probably have it off on New Year's Eve. They said, we need you. And I got really mad. I said, wait, all the data has existed for months for you to know how many servers you need, right? What the reservations are going to be. You can use predictive analytics. You can forecast. And at the time, we were using a scheduling software called Hot Schedules. I was like, why don't they just actually ingest the data and help schedule more efficiently? And I looked around. There was nothing there. So I did kind of the silliest thing in retrospect ever. I put an ad on Craigslist, and this is about 8 or 9 years ago, but it was still way past the heyday of Craigslist, right? But I didn't know better, and I just put an ad, and it was something really stupid. It was like, I have a great idea to help restaurants schedule more efficiently. I have no clue, about technology or how to start a company, but if you're interested in helping be part of this, hit me up. Right. And I was like, okay, here it comes. And so after a day, there was no responses. After 2 days, there was no responses. After 3 days, there was no responses. And I was like, what's going on? Right, in retrospect, it's like, well, obviously no one wants to come work for free for someone that knows nothing about what they're doing. But so I just looked at it and it was kind of my first moment of growth hacking. I said, okay, I reread the whole thing. I said, this seems like it should compel the right person. And I realized the headline was just terrible. And so I changed the headline to say, make $1 million, join a startup. And I got something like 50 responses in the first 1 hour. Over the course of the next few days, I got hundreds of responses. And one of the ones that caught my eye was this guy. He goes, hey, I'm in Texas, but I'm from Chicago. I built the websites of some companies that you might have heard of. And I'm a full stack developer and I love your idea and I'll join you. I was like, okay, let's go. And so I read The Lean Startup by Eric Ries, and I kind of sketched, literally with pencil and paper, what turned into the prototype and then the MVP of the first software that I created. And he built it for me, and I kind of project managed it, and somehow I was able to get some restaurants to start using this software. So then I was able to get into a top-rated accelerator program. We raised some money, got some traction, raised a bunch more money. And so that was kind of the way I cut my teeth in executive leadership and startups. And ultimately, I exited that company some years ago. They ended up becoming more of a compliance engine, and they licensed that technology to some of the bigger players. But one of the things that was really cool is at one point I was on a video call with a guy whose name's Ray Kapikowski, and he's the founder of Hot Schedules. And so it was this full circle moment, and I told him the idea, and he's like, wow, why didn't I think of that? And, Hot Schedule is a multi-billion-dollar company. So it was interesting. And what helped us scale was me learning LinkedIn really well. So that's kind of, ever since I had that first exit, I've just been on LinkedIn nonstop, creating influencers. I'm close to 1 billion impressions on the platform, over 500,000 followers, and it's helped me start a lot more companies.
That's so inspiring. I'm telling you, there's so many people that start in the restaurant industry that want to get where you are today. I'm sure some of the people that are listening today know that I actually worked in a restaurant while I was in my undergrad, and I learned so many good skills there as well. And then being able to hear the people that left the industry and became entrepreneurs and really took what they learned there, the skills that they learned. I mean, I talk about customer service and people skills and knowing what works and what doesn't. And when it comes to line management too, I mean, there's so much that goes into it. You can really apply it almost anywhere. And Cory, you just mentioned LinkedIn, so I'm sorry to jump around a little bit. I do want to mention that you have almost 550,000 followers on LinkedIn. You just mentioned that it plays a significant role in your growth. Can you talk a little bit more about the platform and how you're using it to build your brand and your network and all of that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the same concept that got me all of my applications for my first company, which was the headline on my Craigslist article, is what I realize is the most important thing on LinkedIn as well, is the headline of anyone's profile. I now, one of the things I do kind of to keep all of my lights on and mouths fed is I help others become influencers on LinkedIn as well. And so I've coached about 80 people cumulatively. My clients are at about 7 million followers on LinkedIn. And we've brought in, that I know of, about $7 billion of revenue inbound through LinkedIn. So it's not just vanity metrics, but once the numbers start to add up into some real dollars, and it gets really compelling. So how do I use LinkedIn differently than most people? I speak with my audience, not at my audience. And I had an epiphany that no one goes to LinkedIn to buy anything or to learn anything specific. That's not to say we're not open to learning things or buying things, but no one goes to LinkedIn if you want to learn something. You go to YouTube, you go to Gemini, you go to ChatGPT. Similarly, no one goes to LinkedIn to buy anything specific except for maybe an employee, right? We go to Amazon, we go to Facebook Marketplace, we go to websites. And so I look at most people on LinkedIn, and their content follows this really catastrophic formula, which is, let me teach you something so I can sell you something. And people come to me and they go, LinkedIn doesn't work. I'm like, okay, that's interesting, right? It doesn't work for you. It works for a lot of the people in my world. But so I've adapted this strategy where I speak with my audience. I don't condescend and treat people as though they don't know something. I more conversationally talk about things that either I'm learning or that inspire me, or sometimes I'll talk about some cool technologies, but through the lens of a user or as a founder, or companies that I've started that have gained significant traction. I don't just talk about them on LinkedIn. I just put myself out there and let people kind of come and find out what I'm doing. And, now we've got Grammy Award winning musicians that I grew up listening to that are investing in my music startup. And, they all find me on LinkedIn as well. But I attribute that to me not talking about it too much, right? I don't want to be anomalous, but I also certainly don't want to push people away by seeming, to be too pushy or needy. So I think just the psychology of using the platform differently is what's been so effective for me.
I love hearing that. You just mentioned a music startup. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I was just last night at the same seat at the same table of a restaurant here in Rio de Janeiro, where I came up with this idea almost a year ago. It was 11 months ago to the day. The backstory is it's just one of our local restaurants. It's a great little place, and we were there and our football team was playing. And so everybody there was in Flamengo jerseys. There were 100 people. Everybody had their cold beers on their table. And there was a DJ and he was playing music and people were liking the music. I don't know the music because I'm not from here, but it seemed like it was good music. And the game started. And for some reason, and I'm so glad he did this, he started playing just terrible music. It was like 80s American B-side records that I had never heard of before. And even though I should have been happy that it was music that I could actually understand the words for, I was looking around and at first I was noticing people didn't seem to be enjoying themselves. I'm like, our soccer team is playing. It's the weather's great. Why are people not having a great time? And then I saw a table get up and leave. And I realized that there was still half of a beer left in their big beer bottle. And, I'm very fortunate to kind of have disposable income here, but many people in Brazil are very frugal and no one leaves beer, right? It is a commodity. It is, only drank cold. And so when this table in jerseys of the team playing got up and left their beer, I realized it was this DJ. And I don't know if they knew it was the music or not, or if they just weren't feeling the vibe. But so I kind of had an aha moment. I used to DJ a long time ago, and I love music. I realized there were cameras around the restaurant, little surveillance cameras. And I thought, why, first of all, why did the DJ not read the room, right? When he realized people were no longer dancing and smiling and leaving, he should have been able to read the room. But also these cameras are capturing the data, right? These cameras can see when people are moving and dancing and singing or not. These cameras can understand that people are getting up and leaving at a time where no one should be doing that. So I had an aha moment. I said, what if the streaming platforms in public places were synced to the cameras and understood who was there and could play music that they would want to hear? And I was there with my wife and our daughter, who was a teenager, and I thought, well, what would I call something like that? I'd call it WeJ, right? We all DJ. And so I ran the idea and the name past them, and they were both like, oh my God, that's amazing. I was like, seriously? Women in my life don't usually just say that my ideas are amazing. So I must be onto something. And it's 2 generations of women. And so I started to think more deeply, and I thought, okay, this could revolutionize the failing radio industry. And not only could we embed calls to action in commercials, but we could use generative AI to create on-sentiment music that people want to hear. And that's where we can embed the commercials and the calls to action and things of this nature. And so I talked to a friend of mine who's ultra high net worth the next morning, and she said, Cory, I'd invest in that. That's a brilliant idea. I said, okay. So I contacted a couple people that I knew that have built successful startups that are DJs and musicians and producers. And within days, I had a whole team together. So I decided not to take the early investment because I'm able to self-fund. At this point, we've now got a couple small backers. But so I put together this team, and my whole idea was this read the room technology. And then the other idea that I had at inception was if we used blockchain to know what music was being played when and where, we could compensate the artists fairly, right? So now if we knew what songs were being played in what establishments, we could then track what monies were being made, and we could distribute that amongst the artists fairly. This was my whole idea. So my team was really on fire. We're putting together decks and web pages, and they came to me at, I think it was our 4th stand-up meeting. So a month in, they're like, Cory, I think we're thinking about this all wrong. And I love that, right? I love when people are bold enough to kind of stand up to me. And so I said, okay, say more. They said, if we're just trying to play the right music in public places and it works, why wouldn't Apple Apple and Spotify and some of these other companies come in and do the same thing, right? We don't want to compete against the multi-billion-dollar corporates. However, if we were to build a platform for the producers, musicians, and DJs and get all of them as kind of our customer base and our user base, they can power the speakers, they can leverage the AI, and then no other company is going to come in and steal them because they'll all be on Weejay. So I said, okay, this is very interesting. So now our website is live. It's weejay.world, and we built a community of musicians and DJs, and we built technology specifically for them. So one of the pieces of tech I'm using right now allows anyone to DJ over Bluetooth from their phone. So you can queue up different records, you can mash them up, you can scratch, you can spin, you can, right, and play it over anywhere that has Bluetooth. So we're building these technologies for DJs. We're teaching the DJs how to use the tech that we're building for them in this kind of private community. And the technology to read the room is now pretty much ready. I've been working on it for the better part of a year. My only concern is that I don't know if it's ethical to tap into the surveillance cameras without people's knowledge. So that's kind of the last piece I'm trying to fix is how do we make sure that it's a full opt-in? You know, the easy way would be signs on the walls of establishments, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. But so we're close to launching everything. And, you know, like I said, I don't know that I can name some of the artists yet. It will be releasing that relatively soon. But some of the artists are like globally renowned artists that I've loved for years. And every one of them hears the idea and they want to get involved. And we're taking micro investments from some of them that are value add. So anyway, that's what we're doing in the music space.
I cannot believe that. That is incredible. So Cory, what I just heard is that you found a problem when you were working at a restaurant. So you looked at hot schedules. You're like, look, this could be, it could be evolved. It could be enhanced. Not that it wasn't working. It just could be better. And then you're in a restaurant and you had the same type of epiphany, just in a different arena. That takes a certain type of person. I've talked to so many different people, and it's difficult for some people to sit in a room and come up with ideas that actually work and it fixes a problem. And you do it like this is what it sounds like. And I am just so impressed about that. And something also I was reading about you, Cory, is that you have a weekly AI newsletter called Tech for Good. Is that right?
It is.
Is it true that you have over 70,000 followers as well? I mean, that's a huge following for our subscribers.
I launched it 4 months ago. I'm 2 months back.
I'm done.
Logged.
I cannot.
Well, no. Watch this. Because you read an old stat. So I launched 4 months ago. I'm 2 weeks behind because I just spent a week in Santiago, Chile for our anniversary, and I didn't bring my computer. So it's been 3.5 months of publishing once a week, and it's at 185,000 subscribers.
I cannot. That is insane. That's insane. How are you finding subscribers? Is it referrals, or are you sharing it on LinkedIn? What is the
it's a LinkedIn newsletter, yeah. And what's even more impressive is I have almost $250,000 of sponsorships lined up, and right, I'm not accepting them yet, but they're all. I will feature all of them and let them pay me what I've quoted them. But so this is, realistically, it's a 6-figure following and a 6-figure revenue newsletter, inside of half a year.
I am blown away by those stats. I'm absolutely, because we're in PR naturally, so we are always looking at like subscriber count for newsletters and like what are people getting in front of. That's a huge number in such a small amount of time. I mean, that is so impressive. Can you tell us what you think might have resonated so strongly with your audience? Like, why would they subscribe and stay subscribed?
Well, I think everyone right now is thinking about technology in both the positive ramifications and the negative implications. And so the name, I'm a naming and branding guy, and tech for good, like who doesn't want tech for good, right? And, I teach people how to use the technology, how to build their own technology. The full name of the newsletter is Tech for Good, Building in Public with AI. And so consistent with that, I've started to host some of the stand-up meetings with my executives at various companies that I've founded publicly. And just let anyone come and listen to our stand-up meetings and see how the sausage is made. And so I talk about that in the newsletter. But I think the real secret was not only the name of the newsletter, but because I know LinkedIn so well, I timed it perfectly. So I launched it on the right time, on the right day. A lot of the executives at LinkedIn are fans of mine, so that helps. LinkedIn just reached out to me. They're about to do a big feature on me on LinkedIn, and I guess they have some type of a publication as well that they're going to be featuring me in.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so that will probably push the newsletter to 1 million subscribers.
That's insane. That is so insane. I am going to subscribe right after this conversation because that's incredible. That's totally incredible. Can I ask also what is typically covered? So you were saying it's, some tips, some things that you've learned along the way. Do you ever feature companies or like any current news events?
Yeah, all of the above. And I always put my own perspective on it. So, like with Elon Musk, I don't like him at all. I don't like his technology. I don't trust him. I don't respect him. So when he does stupid shit, I call him out on it, right? Like other companies that I'm a fan of, I've highlighted and I've done that so far. Companies that I love the tech, I use it. I had a company reach out and said, thank you so much for featuring us. And so now they've asked if they can pay to get in another issue. That's a decent 5-figure sponsorship that I got because I featured them for free the first time. But yeah, right now it's mostly just coming from the mind of Cory, and then I've got kind of the list of companies that want to pay to be in it.
That's incredible. And if you already have that many companies that are interested, just imagine where it's going to be in a few years. I mean, if anyone could imagine it, it's you. So that is so exciting. I actually wanted to talk to you about AI, Web3, and blockchain. That's something that I'm not too educated in. And so I want to know what the biggest opportunities are. What are the challenges in that industry? And if you're you talked about social good, how do you apply it for social good?
Okay, so I'm going to start off and scare you and all of the listeners, and then I promise I'll bring it back to the optimism. I'm what's called and considered an effective accelerationist. So we believe to throw everything at technology right now because even though some of the implications can be scary, it has already, effectively the cat's out of the box. So here's the scary thing. Every single AI, and by the way, AI has been around since 1950s. I went through the IBM Watson AI program years ago, so I've kind of always been a geek in the machine learning and AI space. Every AI system, period, that is allowed to do its own thing, almost immediately determines that it needs to eliminate humanity, all of humans. It needs to wipe humans out of existence. And the scary reason that it does that is it determines, again, very rapidly that humans are a threat to each other, themselves, the earth, and the AI. So it says, wait, it effectively looks at humans as a cancer. And it says if humans weren't here, the earth would be better off, the technology would be better off. And so we've also now seen AIs create their own AIs and AIs create their own languages. And so you think about an AI that can create its own language, that can create its own technology that is hyper focused on eliminating humans, all of them, then that's really scary.
That's scary.
And the founder of $1 trillion company called NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, says that the next wave of AI is coming right now, and it's AI embodied, which is basically robots. And I just delivered a keynote speech at the Global Leaders Summit in Istanbul, Turkey a few weeks ago. And one of my slides, I said, I believe AI is about to usher in immortality, time travel, and access to higher dimensions. And, BMW was a corporate sponsor. Their CEOs were there. Like, I thought I was going to get laughed off the stage. And on the contrary, people actually really resonated with that. But I also talked about intelligence and, IQ is the intelligence quotient. I think Einstein was high hundreds, like 170 maybe. AGI, which is effectively here, artificial general intelligence, is going to have up to a 10 times IQ, right? So IQ of over 1,000. And we're working on what's called artificial superintelligence, which is capable of IQs. I mean, the numbers don't make sense, but IQs in the tens of thousands minimally. Right. So if you think about these systems getting insanely smart and, again, the scary stuff that I mentioned before, there's a huge reason for concern. Now, we talk about Web3, which is effectively implementing blockchain into the new internet. In my assessment, all of AI is built on tokens. If tokens were ascribed to any blockchain using a smart contract or smart contracts, and that programming language is called Solidity, but then we can keep it all on track, on the rails. We can ensure, we can program it to not allow it to take out humans. And another company that I co-founded that just raised some money is called Loving Is. And that company is actually teaching AI algorithms and AI what love is. And so right now we've identified about 700 types of love, community love, agape love, romantic love, the list goes on, self-love. And so we have 800,000 ambassadors that are helping train this algorithm on what is loving, what isn't loving, why it matters. And we have a relationship with the world's most famous robot, Sophia. I've had a chance to interview her a few times, and she's been on like Times Magazine. She's actually a human citizen of Saudi Arabia, where one of my projects is being built. She's trained with some open source, but some proprietary algorithms on things like compassion and empathy. And we're taking that to the next level. We aspire to be part of her tech stack. But so if we're able to put AI on blockchain and teach AI what love is, then I believe it ushers in so much good. And we look at things like artificially intelligent nanobots that can go in your body and detect cancers and treat and kill cancers and give us more energy and help break down our foods. And right, like technology is so far ahead of where I think the average person understands it right now that, you know, as long as we can keep it on the rails, and then I think we're about to enter a truly platinum era of humanity.
I love that you're saying this right now, because I was reading about you, and there's one area that you've explored, which is called universal basic income. And so this kind of ties into that. So you have a general good, see, I know, I feel like you would be excited about it because you have this general thought of doing good and using tech for good. And so UBI is one of those things. Can you share your thoughts on this, please? I'd love to hear it. And I know our audience would too.
Well, yes, and I'm here in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and I'm pleased to say that we have a universal basic income program that we've just implemented within the last week or so.
What?
But I've studied 76 UBI programs around the world, from Finland and India to Alaska, and now we have some states in the US that are starting small-scale UBI programs. But this is my very, very, very sincere belief. Other than making carpets out of hand and brewing coffee for people that don't want robots to do it, I don't think there will be jobs for humans in the next 2 years. I think we've already seen companies replace their leadership with AI and they 10x, right? I don't see any job that can't be done better and cheaper by AI and robots. We've now seen robotic AI teachers in schools in both Texas and India, right? Like, I don't see any industry that isn't going to be fully upended by AI and robots. Doctors are going to be AI robots. I mean, everything, right? Cars will drive themselves. So as we enter a post-labor economy, there's an existential need for universal basic income. And I think some of the important things to understand is that it's not a handout, it's a hand up. So my UBI company is called Uplift, but it has to be universal, meaning it's not merit-based. It's not just that you need it. It doesn't matter if you need it. If you don't need it, give it away, you know, whatever you want to do, but it needs to be universal. It cannot be government controlled. People don't trust that, and governments, you know, have a way of ruining pretty much everything. So it also can't have human error as part of the stack. We can't be subjected to greed or to, you know, any manipulation. So it needs to be on blockchain. So we're talking about a universal, unconditional distribution of wealth that is completely powered by technology and is on an immutable ledger, which is what the blockchain is. And so we look at UBI, and you know, there are people that are much deeper in the space than I am, like Andrew Yang and Scott Santons. I really admire both of their work, but we need UBI, absolutely, and we need it yesterday. And here's some of the cool things about UBI. In every pilot so far, it reduces all mental health issues to almost none. It also increases productivity in virtually every pilot. So people become more productive, not less. People start taking initiative to do things like fix the roads and build parks and clean up the beaches, right? And make more money, frankly. Just because you don't need to work doesn't mean you can't find creative ways to make more money. And so we look at universal basic income as a necessity, but then we say, okay, how is it feasible? Because it's a trillions of dollar initiative at global scale. Myself, I didn't come up with this concept, but I'm fully subscribed to it. The concept of universal basic compute, effectively meaning that tech companies that replace all of their human capital with technology are still going to be driving the same or greater profits and revenues. And so we believe that a strong percentage of that used to go to paying the humans needs to still go to the humans. And, it's great that tech can do the jobs, but thank God it doesn't need the paychecks, right? Tech doesn't need to eat. It can't go on vacation. So the number that we're starting to play with some actuaries is 80%. 80% of all revenues generated by AI should go into a liquidity pool and be distributed firstly amongst the displaced employees, but at scale to humanity. And so you look at the Microsofts and the Googles and the NVIDIAs, and you look at their revenues and you say, okay, once they fire 80% of their employees and all that money that they used to pay out in payroll, they don't pay. If they pay that into universal basic income, the math starts to add up. Right. And so there's a lot of pushback. There's a lot of speculation and a lot of people that have all kinds of things to say about UBI. And frankly, most of them haven't done any research. I think a lot of people like to just draw their own conclusions. But when you look at the math, when you look at the business model behind it, it's very feasible. And, again, I think that we're gonna either get this right or I think that this will be an earth of robots and animals and no more people.
Cory, you're one of the most fascinating people I've ever spoken with before. I love hearing about UBI because you're right. We're not, a lot of us aren't educated on it. We may see some news articles here. We might hear some politician talk about it, but we don't necessarily know the fundamentals or what goes into it. So thank you for enlightening us and teaching me as well. I definitely appreciate that. So
thanks for asking me.
Of course. And Cory, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listenership?
I do. I have so many, but I've now done somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 or more podcasts, and I'd say almost all of them, I'm asked that question at the end, and I've decided this is the one thing that I do very redundantly. I'll give you the same answer I've given on all of them because I think it's so important. And for anyone listening, this message is primarily for me. It's a message that I need to hear, but I think anyone that hears it, if it resonates, can also implement it. And it's a very, very simple message. It's a 2-word message that I'll just pull on the thread of a little bit, but that message is to love more. And, what does that mean? It means love yourself more, love your customers more, love your work more, love your family more, love your house, right? Attitude of gratitude, super powerful, but just the more that you love when things don't go wrong, when you stub your toe, love it. When someone stiffs you and don't pay your invoice, love that, right? Just love, 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 love. Why do I say that? Because every time that we bring love into this world, it makes this world a more loving place. There's never going to be enough love on earth. Right. And so for anyone listening to this, I encourage you to just think of how you can bring more love into your life and into your world.
I love that. I love that. We will love more, and we definitely will follow suit, and I'm sure our listenership will too. So thank you so much for joining us today, Cory. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I look forward to hearing others on the show. I really love the premise. I love your energy. You and your team have been incredible. And I also want to thank you, the listener, for tuning in.
Oh, yeah. So thank you to the listener, for everybody, for tuning in to Communicating Capital. For our listeners who want to connect with Cory or learn about any of the ventures that he's currently working on, check out the links in our show notes. As always, thank you for tuning in.